A recent court ruling in the case concerning former President Yoon Suk-yeol's alleged breach of election law has raised questions over whether the party that nominated him could be required to repay public funds used to finance his presidential campaign. Why do elections cost so much? Why does the government help pay candidates' election expenses? And what happens to that financial support if a candidate breaks election laws? Why do elections cost so much? Candidates spend money to introduce themselves and their campaign promises to voters. They print campaign brochures, posters, banners, and advertisements, rent campaign vehicles with loudspeakers, and hire campaign workers. A presidential election is among the most expensive forms of political campaigning, as candidates must reach voters across the entire country. In South Korea's 21st presidential election, each candidate was allowed to spend up to approximately 58.8 billion won on campaign-related expenses. Candidates must also pay a candidate deposit. This deposit is intended to discourage people from running for office, simply as a joke or for publicity. The deposit is 300 million won for a presidential election and 15 million won for a National Assembly election. Young candidates and candidates with disabilities may receive partial reductions. Candidates who are elected or receive a certain percentage of the vote can have all or part of their deposit refunded. Can only wealthy people run for office? If candidates had to shoulder all campaign costs themselves, those with greater personal wealth would hold a clear advantage. To promote fairness in elections, South Korea operates a reimbursement system that allows the national or local government to repay eligible campaign expenses for candidates who receive enough support from voters. Generally, candidates who receive 15% or more of the valid votes are reimbursed for all approved campaign expenses. Those who receive 10% to less than 15% receive reimbursement for half of their approved expenses. By providing reimbursement only to candidates who earn a certain level of voter support, the system helps discourage excessive numbers of candidates while reducing the advantage of personal wealth. Not every expense is reimbursed. The government pays not only for the costs of conducting elections, such as operating polling stations and printing ballot papers, but also covers part of the campaign expenses of candidates who meet certain qualifications. This is known as the public financing of elections. However, not every expense is reimbursed. The National Election Commission reviews candidates' financial records to confirm that the money was spent properly. Expenses that were falsely inflated or used for illegal purposes are not reimbursed because the funds come from taxpayers. Candidates may also receive political donations, but they must report who donated the money, how much was donated, and how it was spent. There are also legal limits on the amount of donations. So what happens if a candidate breaks the law? Government reimbursement is based on the assumption that the election campaign was conducted legally. If a candidate is later found guilty of a serious violation and a final court ruling overturns the election result, the party that nominated the candidate must return both the refunded deposit and the campaign expenses covered by the state. How do other countries handle this? Other democratic countries also have systems to prevent money from having too much influence over elections. In the United States, private donations play a much larger role in election campaigns. Rather than restricting donations, the system focuses on transparency by publicly disclosing who donated, how much they donated, and how the money was spent. Germany has a political system centered more on political parties than on individual candidates. As a result, government funding is provided mainly to political parties. The United Kingdom takes a different approach by strictly limiting how much candidates and political parties are allowed to spend during election campaigns.